Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing lipolysis, which is fat dissolving with Aqualix and Lipolab. Aqualix is deoxycholic acid, Lipolab is phosphatidylcholine or PPC, and according to some studies, they kind of have a synergistic effect when used together. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw up my liquids in a 10 cc syringe. Now you've got 8 cc's in the Aqualix and 10 in the Lipolab, and I'm going to do 4 cc's of Aqualix and 5 cc's of Lipolab in a syringe. So I'm going to show you a little trick here on how to draw up fluids easily to avoid that suction problem that you get when you try to pull fluid out of a vacuum vial. You're going to inject the same amount of air into the vial that you want fluid to come out. So you're basically displacing that fluid and causing it to passively backflow into your syringe. So no more fighting with vials. This is the second half of the Aqualix. I had already drawn up half of it when I started this video. So I only got 3 cc's here. I think I got 4 out of the other one. So I think they ripped me off a little bit. But no matter. I'm going to go ahead and do the same technique and draw up the rest of my Lipolab. And then we'll get started. Now, I read a study, and I've seen some doctors on YouTube doing a technique with this mixture that is basically using a cannula instead of injecting subcutaneously, and you're infiltrating the area, which just means putting a bunch of fluid in it, as opposed to doing a lot of tiny little injections. I've done this once before. I really liked the results. I've worked with plain Lipolab, didn't like that well. I didn't see many results. I've worked with Neobella, also didn't see many results. The best results I did see were from this technique, and then I just got lazy and didn't do it again. So my chin before this was worse even than it is now. So to do this technique, I'm going to use a cannula. These are a little flexible, kind of like straws almost. And this one is a 21 gauge and a 70 millimeter. I did use a shorter one last time and found that it didn't reach quite as far as I wanted it to, so I'm using the 70 this time. So it comes with a pilot needle and a cannula. And I'm going to use some alcohol to wipe my face off. I use these little reusable bamboo pads instead of cotton pads. They're kind of nice. And then my goal is to make the pilot hole and then go in 5 different vectors, injecting the full 8 to 9 mils of fluid. Comes to a little over or a little under 2 mils per pass. I just eyeball it. All the tissue's different in there, so you just kind of go by feel. At least I do. But you'll see now, obviously, the cannula cover is longer than the cannula itself, but you can see it's going to reach to all the places that I want it to. So you're just going to put the cannula, or I'm going to put the cannula. This is not for you. This is for me. I'm going to put the cannula on the syringe so it's ready to go. I don't know why I said 5 there. Sorry, no clue. If you can figure it out, let me know. Oh, I wasn't saying 5. I was saying glove. I need a glove. Okay, anyway. Gonna go ahead and make the needle. I do not numb for this. I want to feel everything. It really doesn't hurt. I know Aqualix can burn like, Satan's butthole, but with the phosphatidylcholine, mixed in it. I don't know if it buffers it somehow, but it really doesn't bother me. This pilot needle is a little ouchy, but once you get into the right layer, you just don't feel much. So numb if you want. I don't know if your numbing would go deep enough anyway. But see, the pilot hole is going to go kind of parallel to your jawline. And then once you get in there, you really want to kind of wiggle around and make that hole a good sized, because you're going to try to poke a cannula through it. And that cannula is blunt. It's got a hole on the side, not the tip. And that blunt end of the cannula is going to be what pushes through the tissues without, unlike a needle. Needle just kind of rips through the tissues. A cannula just pushes everything out of its way. So find that pilot hole, and you may have to push a little bit. You'll feel it when it pops into the right area. There, I think it did for me. Yep. And then with my gloved hand, I can feel where the tip of the cannula is. And I'm kind of aiming for the thickest part of that fat pad. Because after this, I'm going to go over it and inject a little shallower with kind of the more traditional technique with the insulin syringes. So I'm basically doing 2 layers of this Aqualix cocktail here. But the first time I go straight back and get it as far back as I can get it, and then just start pushing in the fluid. It goes in pretty easy, and I want to withdraw as I'm pushing and get, that not quite 2 mils to fill up that tract. And then I'm keeping my finger on the end of the cannula through my skin, because you want to pull almost to the hole, but not quite, because if you get too far, it's going to pop out. And it's not the end of the world, but then you got to figure out how to get it back in, which sometimes is easy and sometimes not. So I get almost to the hole, see, and then I just redirect. Now I'm going to go this direction. So I'm going to go kind of right between my first line and my jawline, because my last pass is going to be right along my jawline. And I'm just doing the same thing. Just kind of pushing through the tissue. You'll see how I kind of wiggle it a little as I'm pushing, kind of jab quickly. That's just what works for me. If you feel any resistance that you don't think feels right, just kind of pull back and redirect. We do have some blood vessels and nerves in there. They really shouldn't be in this fat layer too much, but everybody's different. And if it hurts, you shouldn't push through it. There's weird and there's hurt, and this feels weird, but it does not hurt. So I'm pulling back and injecting on my way back out, and now I'm going to try to redirect and go along my jawline, except, whoops, I pulled too far. So now you'll get to see what to do if that happens. I'm going to try to get back in that pilot hole. Now it's all slippery because Aqualix is leaking out, but it goes back in pretty easily for me. And then I'm going to run it right along the jawline and do the exact same thing. Okay, it doesn't go right back in, but it does go back in, I promise. Sorry, I'm kind of obscuring sometimes here. I'm not a professional videographer, and I just had this up on a little soap holder that I have underneath my mirror. You can probably tell I have a teeny tiny bathroom. My sink is just, barely has any counter space, and I'm working in a small area here. Right in that area where I just pointed, that is where some nerves and blood vessels come up. There's kind of a notch in your jawbone. You can even see it. It's where our jowls want to kind of fold. And depending on the plane that you're in, you may kind of bump up against those or feel them as you go by. If it hurts, do not do it. Just pull back and redirect into a deeper plane or a shallower plane or something. But, you really don't want to be bathing those nerves in this Aqualix if you can help it. I've done it before. I had some jaw or nerve discomfort for about a month afterwards. It doesn't cause permanent nerve damage that I'm aware of, but I know it can cause some temporary nerve irritation, which is not fun. It doesn't feel good. So just be kind of careful in that area. And now I'm going to try to angle it another way and see I'm kind of just going in and out, in and out, in and out. If you just try to horse it over, it's going to be trying to cut sideways or move sideways through tissue. And because it's blunt, it won't want to do that. So these little sawing motions will kind of help you redirect. Redirect. And then I'm just going to continue and do the other two sides. Now, Aqualix, one of the things that it's known for or marketed for is something about the composition of it is supposed to help conduct ultrasound waves. And so this is often done, this infiltration process, with ultrasonic cavitation afterwards, and I have done that. I liked it. Again, I don't know how much of a difference it made because I haven't tried it without the ultrasonic cavitation, but I have a machine, and it's just a cheap machine I got on probably eBay. That's where I get my cannulas too, because they can be pricey. But yeah, after all of this, a little later, I will do ultrasonic cavitation session. And I know from experience I will be blown up like a bullfrog after this for a few days. It's very similar to what you see when people get Kybella. So thank goodness for pandemic masks. Again, just feeling where the tip of the cannula is as I pull back so that I hopefully do not pull out. And redirecting one more time here. Now, a lot of people have asked me about cannulas. Are they safe for the needles? Yes. Can you still puncture a vessel with them? Technically, yes. So technically you could get an occlusion if you're injecting something with a cannula. However, when you go with a larger cannula, it is much safer. I've heard YouTube doctors who recommend nothing smaller than a 25 gauge for cannulas, but I always buy 21s. They're good, versatile, all around for what I'm needing. I inject platelet-rich fibrin with these as well. I don't do fillers, so I have not used them for fillers, but I find they have a really nice mix between stiffness, so drivability, I would call it. If you hear snoring, that's my dog who came up to see me. Stiffness and flexibility, and to me they're easier to drive than a thinner cannula. So I'm just going to massage that in, and then we'll move on to the subcutaneous injections. All right, so I have done the same technique and drawn up the same exact solution into insulin syringes. What I did was I took my 10cc syringe that I mixed the two in, and I put it back into the sealed Lipolab vial, and then drew my syringes up out of there. So I'm going to do 3 injection points on my Jowls. I've done this before, so I know that this works for me. I'm doing 2 mils. These are 1 mil syringes, and I'm doing 0.2 mils at each injection point. And I'm really just doing 3 injection points at the kind of saggiest bottom part of my jowls. I don't want to lose upper face fat. I really don't want to lose mid face fat, but I would like to get rid of some of this weight that's pulling down. So I could mark them with a pen, or I use an eyeliner usually that I don't use for anything else. But I know where I always go, so I'm just doing these freehand. Again, in this area, there is nerves and blood vessels that come up. So I don't know if you saw, but I do a little aspiration when I'm in the area that's closest to the nerves and vessels. If I feel a zing when that needle goes in, I will find a different spot, because I don't want to inject again right into the nerve space. So I do this pretty quickly. This, again, just really doesn't hurt. Botox for me hurts worse than this. And then once it's in there, you can really kind of feel where you've been. So I just move to the next area that feels kind of empty. And here I go ahead and aspirate, because we're getting close to the nerves that are around, or nerves, arteries, and veins that are around the mouth area. And then I didn't have quite enough to finish my last one, so I drew up a couple more mils, because we want to be even. Unless our faces aren't even, then it's different. But mine's pretty even, so. I've noticed I'm starting to get my resting bitch face back, so soon I'm going to do a few more threads, but I wanted to get some of these lipo dissolvers going in and working first. I'll give them a few weeks to work before I go in with threads. And hopefully I can video that as well next time. I'm going to work on the corners of my mouth again. And I may do some lifting cogs. So here you'll notice I do inject the full mil. It doesn't come squirting back like the other. First of all, the needle's smaller. Second of all, it's only a mil. But it does make it easier to draw back as you're doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and do 5 syringes of this under my chin. And this will be a shallower depth than what I infiltrated earlier. I'm going to do 1 syringe right down the middle, and you'll see. I could, again, mark this with a grid, but it's a pain in the butt, and I don't tend to. I just go by feel. I know where I've been. I know where I'm going. And I'm just going to do, again, 0.2 mils in each injection site. And just really, really get that area covered in lipolytic. Now, what I'll do tonight is, pardon my dog, she is making her bed right next to me. She doesn't do anything quietly. I'm going to drink a lot of fluids for the next few days. I mean, I try to anyway, but I'm really going to concentrate on it so that my liver and kidneys can hopefully get rid of this. Now she's making her bed on me. Get rid of this fat that's hopefully getting flushed out of my system. And I'm just gonna continue to inject and cover that whole chin area. I'm gonna speed it up here a little bit because it's kind of a lot of the same, but my dog came in to check on me. That's what the grin was about. She's a French bulldog. She is kind of just a Velcro dog. She's got to be with me or know where I am at all times, or she is not happy. She's 10 and a half, so she sleeps a lot as well. So at least when I'm at work, she does okay. But anyway, I'm just kind of feeling, when I'm doing these, kind of feeling the tissue to see if it feels firm and inflated where I've been. And you're going to notice it start to really puff up. Now, when I just did plain lipolab, it burned. It actually did burn. I have not done plain Aqualix, so I don't know the burn of that. But really, at this point, I'm not feeling much of a burn of any kind. I mean, it feels full. It feels kind of warm, but it doesn't have that achy, that it eventually will as it starts to break everything down. But it's kind of nice that way. And notice I'm not going past that nice little line that's really showing up now between my fat and my jaw. But there's not much fat in that area, and yeah, a lot of nerves and vessels run along your jawline, so you kind of want to avoid that if possible. Now, I have a couple areas under my chin that it just doesn't seem to matter. They always bleed and they always bruise. You will see me hit those here soon. It doesn't, like I said, it just doesn't seem to matter what I do, even if I've aspirated in those areas before, like am I hitting a vessel or what? But for whatever reason, they just like to swell up. So I'll have some bruises tomorrow, most likely. The last time I did this, like I said, my cannula was a little short and I got a little aggressive with the cannula. And I had some pretty good streaky bruises from when I did the pullback technique. Hopefully I won't have those again, but even if I do, it's totally worth it. So this is the pass that I'm going to get the bleeding on. And one thing that's nice about DIY is we can take our time. We don't have to just, move quickly. Time isn't money for us like it is for doctors. You'll see a lot in videos on YouTube when doctors are doing this. They're just wiping away the blood and just keep wiping. But yeah, there's the guy. But they don't actually stop and hold pressure a lot of the time, at least not long enough to make any difference. We have the luxury of being able to stop, hold pressure, stop that bleeding, hopefully minimize the amount of blood that's under the skin, and then hopefully minimize our bruising. I tend to bruise really bad with tox for some reason, or not bruise, but bleed. And anytime I pull that needle out and it's bleeding, I just stop and I wait 30 whole seconds with good firm pressure, and I never actually bruise from tox, even though I bleed a lot from tox. So here's the last syringe to even out the two sides. But I have about 1 ml left, a little over 1 ml maybe, in my vial, whatever. And I like to have that in reserve for touch-ups just in case. And I don't mean touch-ups later, I mean touch-ups when I get done with what should be the same amount on both sides. Fact is, all our tissues are differently. We have different tissue densities in different areas. And as I'm feeling kind of a hollow area, even though I put the same amount on both sides. So I'm just going to go back and fill that in with the remainder of my cocktail. You know, this is an art. It's a science, but it's also an art. And I'm just going for the same feel on both sides. You're going to see how wiggly my chin is here in a minute. And it's going to blow up tonight, and it'll probably take at least a week to come back down. But so I just put a whole nother syringe basically in this hollowish area. There's my flubber. And now I'm just gonna put the last part in the middle there, and this will be done. All finished. Bye-bye.